Good afternoon, this is Mr. Chris. I'm out here at one of our lovely creeks at Hereford Glen. This is Owl Branch, and our job today is to assess the health of this creek in a very special way. Now, one of the things we look for in scientists when we're evaluating any habitat is for biodiversity. That means the more different living things we have living in that habitat, the healthier it is. But as far as biodiversity goes, one thing we're going to be looking for in particular in Owl Branch today, we're going to be looking for sensitive animals and specific kinds of animals. The animals that we're going to be looking for live in the water, and they're called benthic macro invertebrates. And depending on which particular benthic macro invertebrates we discover today, that's going to help us identify the health of this particular creek. What we're hoping to find more sensitive benthic macroinvertebrates. Now, when I say sensitive, that doesn't mean if I yell at them, they go running off to their bedroom, they slam the door, and they just pout all day long and play Xbox. They're not that kind of sensitive. When I refer to a benthic macroinvertebrate as sensitive, that's an indicator that that particular organism is very sensitive to pollution. So if you are finding sensitive benthic macroinvertebrates living in a body of water like right here, that's indicating that there really isn't much pollution there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my trusty kick seine or D-net, and I'm going to go into the creek right there. You can watch my technique. I am going to see what we catch, and then I'll bring my net back right over here, and you can help assess the health of the creek by classifying or identifying the animals that I have caught here at Owl Branch. So stand by. You may be wondering why I'm kicking the creek. The reason I'm kicking the rocks in the creek is to dislodge all those benthic macroinvertebrates. They do not want to let go. Most of them are living on the bottom. They're anchored to those rocks. Generally, they do not swim around like fish. Notice my movement, how I'm moving upstream or into the current. That way I'm always sampling parts of the creek that have not been disturbed. Right here I am flipping a rock over, and if there are any animals stuck on it, I'm washing them into the net for my data. It's really important if you ever are looking at rocks in a creek to return them back to the water, because you never know, there might be an animal stuck to that rock, and if you leave it out of the creek, it will dry and die. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this lovely net full of goodness, and I'm going to sort it out. I'm going to put the animals into groups with other animals that share the same characteristics, physical characteristics. That's going to make it a lot easier to identify them. So I'm going to stop recording, and I'm going to get set up and set the camera up so you can see exactly what I'm doing. Okay? So the next thing I've done, I've filled up my ice cube tray with water. The water goes up about halfway. The reason I only put the water up halfway is the animals that I'm going to be putting in the ice cube tray. If I had the water full to the top, the animals would be able to escape, and they most likely wouldn't survive, and I wouldn't have any data to help me assess the health of the creek. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dump out all the debris in here onto my net. This is going to help me strain out all the water and all the debris and identify the animals. So I'm just going to put this inside out, and I've got a little bit of water here. I'm going to rinse and that off. Make sure I have everything. So I'm going to go through my material right here, and it doesn't look like a whole lot, does it? So you have to take every single leaf, and if they're stuck together, you need to pull them apart. You see anything on there? Look very closely. You're looking for anything that's moving. You have to be very careful. And then once you've looked very closely, see, I do not see anything on this leaf. So if they were folded, you would unfold it. If they're stuck together, you peel them apart. And if you don't see anything on there, then you just make a done pile. So I'm going to go through these leaves. And not seeing anything. And the reason I'm looking at the leaves so closely, a lot of these animals that we're looking for, these benthic macroinvertebrates, this is their food. They eat all the dead stuff that's settled to the bottom of the creek. So I'm looking, oh, this one's folded. Not seeing a whole lot. Haven't spotted anything yet. So the next thing you would do, we'll go through all these leaves too, is you look through all of this material that's in the bottom of the net. I'm going to get really close. And if I were the field biologist going through a net like this, it would probably, just this little bit of material, I would probably take 15 or 20 minutes to go through it. Okay, I am not seeing a whole lot of stuff here. And you know, honestly, that happens from time to time. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop recording, and I'm going to go back into a creek in a different spot, maybe with a little bit more water moving in it, and see if I can find some more stuff. All right, so let's see if this one does any better. Let's get everything dumped out and rinse it. Let's see if we got anything. So right away, we got a fish. This is a dace.
Sorry, that is not a dace. That is a blue ridge sculpin.
And I've got another little fish. This is a dace. See a stripe down its side? I'll put him in his own little hole. Well, I have another one. Now those fish are not benthic macroinvertebrates. They have a spine. Fish have spines, and we don't use them for water quality. This is one of the benthic macroinvertebrates. You can see its characteristics, because you're going to be classifying these animals as sensitive or tolerant, which means they can tolerate pollution. So I'll put that one in his own little hole.
Now, even though we're not using these fish as part of our data to determine the health of the creek, they're going to come in handy in just a little bit when we talk about biodiversity. That's coming up soon.
And I'm still not seeing a ton of stuff. So normally, if I was looking Trying to identify if I had biodiversity or not. There is a magic number associated with that. If you can find 5 or 6 different organisms living within a habitat, that's a pretty good indicator that the habitat's in good shape. So I'm just going to look this stuff really quickly. Alrighty. So, from our observations, this is what we have captured today. We have captured 3 different animals. We have ones we aren't using for our assessment. This is a sculpin, blue-ridged sculpin. This is a dace. And your job is to classify this particular animal. And then depending upon this animal being sensitive or tolerant, that should give you an idea of the health of the creek. Now, normally, I would do this for an extended period of time. Usually when I am looking for benthic macroinvertebrates, I am looking in at least 6 or 7 areas, usually spread out across about 100 yards of the creek. So when I'm going to sign off here in a minute, and your job is going to be take a look at the data that you've collected and determine the health of the water. Oh, that benthic's trying to crawl out. So let's talk about what just happened. I went into the creek twice and I wanted to see what animals I could find in the creek, and we didn't find a whole lot. We found 2 different species of fish. We found that the dace and the sculpin, and we found a benthic macroinvertebrate. We found, and that's going to be up for you to identify, and that should help give us an idea of the health of the creek based on that animal's sensitivity. So for example, if you discovered that that particular animal, once you've identified it, is a super sensitive animal, that would indicate that the water it's living in is pretty clean. Where on the other hand, if you identified that animal as very tolerant, that would mean that animal was very tolerant to pollution and could live in dirty, filthy, nasty water, and that might be an indicator that this water is in not good shape. One thing you have to take into consideration is that this creek is changing all the time. If I go into that same place right there and look for animals tomorrow, I'm probably going to find different things. The creek is always changing. A really good example is right here. This is a tree that fell over last year, and it just totally changed the stream bed. So nature is always changing things. It's always in motion. And that's one of the reasons why we're always collecting data out here, because we want to make sure as stewards that how we're interacting with the habitat and the people that live around Harford Glen, we want to make sure that we're not impacting habitat in a negative way. And one of the best things that we can do to kind of give us an idea if we are causing a problem with the habitat is to check the water quality. So let me ask you a question. Is it a reasonable thing to say that if people were doing bad stuff to the habitat, do you think the water might not be in great shape either? Do you think that if people were doing the right thing and being good stewards, do you think that might lead to good water quality? That's just something to think of. And that is the big reason why we continually check the water quality here at Harford Glen. So I hope you enjoyed being out here at Harford Glen and enjoy being outside. Harford Glen is here for you guys, and I'm a lot happier when I see families out here taking advantage in a good way, learning things about nature and experiencing the world around them. So this is Mr. Chris, and I hope you have a great day, and I hope to see you out in the woods. Have a good day. So one last thing to consider as you get ready to assess the health of barred owl branch, I thought it might be a good idea just to go over the facts. That might help you a little bit to organize. First thing we learned, there were 3 different organisms we found in that part of the creek. We found a black-nosed dace, we found a sculpin, and then that benthic macroinvertebrate that you're in charge of identifying. So I thought it would be neat just to take a little quick walk along Barred Owl Branch. This is the creek that we were assessing. Just thought you might enjoy taking a peek around. And one last thing I thought might be kind of interesting, I'll give you one last thing for you guys, is I have a GoPro, and I thought, hey, you know, it'd be pretty cool to you know, look underwater. They're waterproof, and there's some areas I know where some different animals live in the creek, and I thought it might be interesting to show those to you. So this is normally the outdoor classroom that I'm using when I bring 5th graders out here. So normally what we do is we go into the creek, that's there right behind me, and we collect animals, and then this is where we come to talk about the data that we collected. So I'm just going to make my way back to the creek, and I'm going to put the GoPro on the selfie stick, and just kind of as a little bit of fun, because that's what we like to do here at Hartford Glen. We like to learn, but we like to have fun as well. See what's living in the creek.